Hi everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Lots of price action this week, spreading with Nvidia leading the market and spilling over to Palantir a little bit, but also more news regarding dilution, insider transactions, and many more, as well as a new interview from Alex Karp. But looking at the stock first, technically Palantir is down several percentage points since last week, but appears to be holding the $20 range for now in the short term healthily into the 20s, so we'll continue to watch this over time. Now, news-wise, we opened the week with the cool VA article that gave us more specific numbers and metrics actually ending up being deleted. And I just happened upon this by chance when making a video. And we don't know why here, but some speculation. It's because it made certain folks look bad, or maybe the numbers provided weren't accurate. It's all just speculation, like I mentioned. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for whatever reason, it's been deleted. So I trust it's in our best interest as shareholders to just move past it. So if we get another article similar to that, covering the VA and any metrics, I'll make sure to do any comparisons though. So some may argue I'm not helping by reporting on it, but I'm just here to note what has happened so we get a full picture. Then we get the S8 filed from Palantir earlier this week. This is part of their long-term compensation plan for employees with stock. For this round, it's an additional 110 million shares. So of course, for shareholders, this means you technically own a smaller part of the company. But if there's demand for shares, you can see how it won't necessarily destroy the stock price as long as folks understand. And with balance, stock-based compensation still is an effective tool if you own a company to have motivated employees. I think of it as running a smaller business yourself that might have a profit-sharing program or incentive for those employees. If they have some participation in the upside, they may feel a sense of ownership, of course, for themselves, and I think that would most agree that's a pretty strong motivator to contribute the best you can. So both shareholders and employees can win here, but like I said, there's always a balance, so we just need to continue to monitor this over time. Then Palantir releases a blog on their response to the NIST's request for information regarding recommendations on AI security. Palantir points out their reputation, experience being in the space for so long, and we know government-wise they've built up these connections, so I'd say folks at least hear them out on this. But essentially they follow the same themes that we've seen over time of responsible development and being important for AI. There needs to be infrastructure in place though for development, all while having safety controls and protections of privacy, as well as testing and evaluation on certain use cases because hallucinations may appear when you have a blanketed approach when it comes to testing, and ensuring that the data itself is actually used for training that they're allowed to for large language models. Following privacy laws is important, but most importantly I'd say is that the chance to set the standards while we're all setting this up in the beginning is really the big impact that we can have today. So take a quick read here if you're interested. Now, not directly Palantir news, but I still think important news to cover for the whole week and the whole space of the stock market that they're in. Nvidia released earnings and they are not slowing down. Expectations were set high for them and they smashed them, top line, bottom line, everything in between, and even guiding higher still. The whole AI space being driven by compute is not slowing down, but rather speeding up, and Nvidia is the main winner in all this. But by proxy, the market appears to at least be mixed on rewarding adjacent plays. Palantir in the short term experienced a quick boost in price right when they released their earnings, but has ultimately leveled off as of this recording, just so you know. And this is similar for other companies as well, so like I said, I'll leave it up to you for how connected their performances are. But important to be aware of it, there's a whole AI wave happening for the market or just specific performers like Nvidia. Then Palantir released another blog post calling out the government on their out-of-date classification system. They go through their experience and perspective of the current classification system and saying AIP can solve many of their issues, with the biggest being a potential savings of $18.4 billion for taxpayers. Now, they go through the main value and envision how classification system can be in the short term, so that's actually really close in 2025 and 2026, with possibly having software agents that can run on top of an ontology of these modernized rules of classification. But really, this relies on the government taking action themselves, so Palantir at least is giving them their 2 cents, but it's another to actually get this implemented, but at least they're giving it a try. Honestly, I was just shocked they gave that big $18.4 billion amount there in the article. Could be a very political and military win for someone who's willing to take this on, but Palantir is just giving this recommendation. And then insider transactions. All throughout the week saw insider sales come through, but at least on Friday we got the Form 4s, which are great for seeing the entirety of the transaction in relation to the remaining holdings. No need to go through every single one here individually, just note they are on the investor relations site, and when you do look at these transactions, these are all small percentages of their remaining holdings, meaning that management is still aligned with shareholders to perform if they want to continue selling their stock in the future. And just a word to watch out for, these kind of insider transactions are usually put up to grab attention on online article headlines that don't fully put into context the amount of remaining shares they have, so I'd say take them with a grain of salt here where to put out insiders are dumping to get you into an article and just get the clicks. It's the same method they do with institutional buying as well and selling, where they're they're saying like a major fund or pension is dumping Palantir or picking up Palantir. But when you look at the actual 13F, it's no big deal, or it's maybe a different percentage increase. So for insiders, it's better to just go to the source to see the remaining Class A and Class B shares, as I point out on Form 4 of the Statement of Changes in Beneficial Ownership found directly on their investor relations website. And Palantir comes up in the UK here, but something different than the NHS. It sounds like members of parliament are a little bit worried about homelessness of Ukrainian refugees in their country. We know Palantir has been helping the UK government in managing this, but not much details besides released by Palantir. So basically, they're wanting a fuller picture of homelessness and the population affecting the Ukrainians and making up this group, as well as the slowdown in the visa applications process for them. But Palantir is brought up in quotes by the committee figuring out what to do, and if there's an extension at play for the contract outside of the free trial, and how will that be justified? I'm not saying that they're going to lose this renewal or will get it, but sounds like we are getting close to a point for them making a decision on this and maybe extending the use of Palantir for this specific use case here. So it's always great to keep up on this and see the progress there. And Palantir released a new Alex Karp interview at FII Priority 2024, showing off a little French in the beginning there with the host. But Karp continues to share his views and background, showing why technology will be shaping the future of everyone's lives, and notes a lot of the winners adopting this new technology is the United States and the Middle East specifically, and that's kind of interesting that he pointed them out. And this has actually been a common theme actually recently, at least with partnership announcements and the recent speaking out in Dubai. Karp has been specifically calling out the Middle East here. Now, I don't know for sure why, but it is interesting that it's becoming part of the norm. And, even if it's part of a larger agenda or change in the world dynamics, especially for their business, since the conflict out in Israel and Hamas, maybe that's a big factor too. But that is noteworthy to point out in my opinion. And another thing that they point out too, the tried and true questions that comes this way all the time, is around the balance for privacy versus security. And I know it's been talked about to death here, but still always cool how Karp ties this and how Palantir addresses this supposed necessary trade-off with being able to go so deep into the problem that they built out at Palantir, the architecture that solves this. So you have granular security models, and it ties to artificial intelligence with a working but still ethical large language model here, because the controls are in place for training it with data it's allowed to use. And it's also the same as how they're going after terrorists without infringing on everyday normal citizens' privacy. And another cool question too that came up during the interview addressed what Alex Karp is proud of regarding Palantir, which is winning for the West and continuing to innovate on the battlefield, especially as we transition to wars fought through software. Now, people are still going to argue if that's true or not, but in regards to at least trying to move towards that, I think Palantir is in that right direction. And probably most interesting to investors, I'd say, is Karp keeps his perspective, that the world is just becoming more and more disjointed here, and we see this all around us as well. Palantir is built for these kind of times, and their products working this environment, even if there's disruption around your business, supply chains, assets, everything that can be disrupted. But Palantir addresses working in these stress environments and their products taking that on. And maybe disheartening to some, but interesting perspective too. Karp was asked about what he thinks the future looks like, and he says it straight up that it's undecided. He's saying the ramp up for AI is now, and the next 18 months can determine that trajectory if the West is able to get dominance in technology, but that remains to be seen here. So check out this interview here. It's around 20 minutes long. It's not so bad. It's pretty quick. And you can see that this is Karp's bread and butter, at least for the topic that he was talking about today. But let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.